guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be filming another video in my How I Revise series, and that is going to be how I revised my English language exams and my English literature exams. So the reason I decided to incorporate the two subjects into one video is because honestly I did not revise enough for English language for it to be worth having its own video. And the reason that I honestly didn't revise English literature that much is because I just didn't feel like I needed to. I found that I was getting good grades without having to revise it that much, because honestly English language is one of those subjects where you can't really properly revise for the exam. However, I did do a little bit of revision for English language, and that was to simply have a look at the mark scheme for each of the different question types, and then also look at some examples of answers written by students who were getting similar grades that I wanted. These were really easy to find on the exam website, and then also I know that teachers have a resource as well where they can have a look at more example questions, so you could always just ask your English teacher to provide you with some examples or the mark scheme if you're struggling to find some yourself. Also, for English language, I found that watching Mr. Bruff's videos on YouTube was really helpful, because he goes through the mark scheme as well, and he talks about all the kind of do's and don'ts of each question, because I'm sure, as you know, each question is different on the paper, so it's worth knowing the differences between them and also where students get caught out and lose marks, etc. That was pretty much all I did for English language. I didn't do much else. I didn't do any practice questions. I probably should have, but I didn't. But if you do struggle with English language, then obviously I recommend doing all the things I just said and doing lots of practice questions, which I'm sure you could find online, or you could ask your teacher for some. Anyway, moving on to English literature, which is what the majority of this video is going to be about, because I did actually revise for English literature and I did quite a lot of revision and quite a lot of different revision methods. So my first tip for English literature is simply read the texts. If you don't know what the storyline of your texts are, then it's going to be pretty hard to answer an exam question on them. So make sure that you know what's going on with each of your texts, whether it be your play, whether it be the poems, whether it be a text, whatever. I don't recommend watching the movie versions of them, because sometimes it won't be exactly the same as the story. They might have twisted the quotes, they might have modernised the speech in it. But obviously, at the end of the year, if you do want a quick recap, then movies can be a really good way to just quickly recap the storyline of one of your texts. I read all of my texts at least twice on my own. That's excluding the times that you read it in class. And I think that did really help me, because at the end of the year I had a really detailed understanding of all the texts, and I think that was really vital to the grade that I got. If you are struggling reading your Shakespeare play, for example, then I really recommend going on the website called SparkNotes, because they have this part of their website called No Fear Shakespeare, and basically they translate all the Shakespeare plays into kind of modern language. So what you'll do is you'll have original Shakespeare text on one side and then the translated modern text on the other side, so it's a side-by-side comparison. And I read Macbeth in this way at least once, I think, and this helped me so much, because if you're reading some scenes and you're just like, what on earth is going on here, because I feel your pain. Shakespeare is hard to read sometimes and hard to understand. Make it a lot clearer to understand, and also it can highlight the importance of some quotes and also translate some words that you might be stuck on. So when you are reading your text, say it is the last time that you're reading them or the second to last time, I recommend going through and highlighting all the key quotations. I don't mean this is quotations that you focused on in class, I mean quotations that you think you could talk about in a question, and also quotations that you think prove a point. It doesn't have to be the kind of generic quotations that everyone uses, because I know for like Macbeth there are quotes that everybody knows, like is that a dagger I see before me, etc. Everybody knows that quote, so maybe go through and highlight some more kind of original quotes that not so many people talk about. Also here, if you're wondering what this is my A Christmas Carol text, and I was just going to show you how I highlighted all the key quotes. So I did this throughout the whole thing, and I highlighted quite a lot. Obviously, you are not going to use all these quotations in one exam question and one essay, but it helps to have a wide range of them. Also, I did not memorise all these quotations. These are just ones that I thought were relevant and I thought I could talk about. The reason I think it's really helpful to go through and highlight any key quotes is because it can then help you with further revision methods. One of the revision methods that I used is I made flowcharts for the events of a text. So for example, in Macbeth, I made a flowchart for each scene and each part of each scene. So what I would do is I'd put a short summary of what happened in that scene or that part of that scene, and then also I would list some key quotations that I highlighted underneath that. So here is one of my Macbeth flowcharts. So as you can see, this is scene 1, and I've just put a short introduction, introduced to witches are planning when to meet Macbeth. And then underneath I'll put some key quotations like in thunder, lightning or in rain, when the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won. And I've done that for all the different scenes. As you can see, they sort of follow around like this, and this provides you with a really great overview of the whole text, and this is really useful at the end of the year if you just want to quickly recap what happens in each scene and the key things that are said in those scenes. So you could make those flowcharts as you went along or after you'd finished reading the whole book. So what I did is, as I was reading Macbeth, say after I'd read the first scene, I would then go and write the summary and the key quotations on my flowchart. Then I would read scene 2, do scene 2 on my flowchart, then scene 3 on the flowchart. You get my drift. Also, another thing that I did is I made mind maps. You can make mind maps for characters, you can make mind maps for themes, you can do it for pretty much anything in English literature. So I did a lot of character mind maps, and I did these mainly for A Christmas Carol, which is one of the texts that I studied. So I just have some examples here. So here I have a mind map for the minor characters in A Christmas Carol. So we've got like Marley's ghost, portly gentleman, Fezziwig Belle, Belle's family, businessman, etc. And then what I've done is I basically once again used the key quotations that I've highlighted in my text and put these around, and then also I've kind of written down the key things about those characters. Here we have, for Marley's ghost for example, I've written a key quotation here, and it's a mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness. And then I've just annotated that a bit saying, life's too short to waste it on things that don't matter, e.g. money. I find this a really good way to memorise the quotations as well, and annotating them obviously helps to develop your ideas, and if this part of the text comes up in your question, then you already know sort of the annotations of some of the quotations that may be in that extract. So I've done that for pretty much all the quotations and all the things that I think are significant about each character. And if you are struggling for inspiration, then you can go on SparkNotes. They do have character analysis and things like that. And then also you can get revision guides for English literature as well that have little like character fact files and stuff. So that can be a really good place to get ideas about the characters and get perhaps some more original ideas than ones that you've discussed in class. So this does look quite big and confusing because obviously it's got a lot on it, but to me it does make sense. Obviously I've got all the characters there, and then I've got these little dashes that go off from it and the quotations, and if you follow the dashes then it's pretty much self-explanatory where they lead to. So here I have one for Scrooge. So for the bigger characters, like the main characters of your text, it might be worth doing a whole mind map on them because obviously there is a lot to say about them. So here's one that I did on Scrooge, once again doing the same sort of thing, but here I have all the significant things about Scrooge. So I have communication with other characters, foil for other characters, his change, his home and his counting house, his appearance and his characteristics. And then I've got key quotes all about those certain things, and once again annotations of those quotes showing what they mean, showing how they're significant to Scrooge. Then I have one for ghosts as well, and a small one here just for some more minor characters. So then what you can do with those mind maps is you can stick them on your wall, stick them, I don't know, on your ceiling, on your floor, I stuck mine on my wardrobe, somewhere where you can read them and you can look over them sort of on a weekly basis, daily basis, whatever. And I found that this really helped for me to memorise the key quotations, because say in the evening I just sort of sat in front of my wardrobe and just read over my mind maps, read the points that it said, read the quotations, and I found that this meant that I took it in a lot more and remembered it quite well. Another thing that you can do with your key quotations, and something that I found really helped me, is you can make key quotation fact files. So I did this for an inspector calls, and basically what I did is flicked through my inspector calls book and looked over all the quotations and then wrote them under the character title. So here we have an example of that. So here we have Mr. Burling at the top, and then these are all quotes from Mr. Burling that I thought were significant and that I thought I could talk about and perhaps I could use in an essay, and the ones that are highlighted are like the key quotations. So these are the ones that I made sure that I remembered. Oh, I'm not sure what those sticky notes are actually. Oh, they're just sort of like extra kind of like brain waves that I had about points, so I just stuck them there. So I have those for Mr. Burling, and then here we have lots for the inspector, because obviously he's a very key character, he says a lot. And I did them in different colours, as you can see, to tell the difference. Here we have a lot of key quotations from Sheila, then some from Gerald and some from Eric, and then some from Mrs. Burling. You get my drift. It's just key quotations from all of them. And then also I have some key stage directions, because you do get marks for talking about stage directions in your exam, because it is a structural point. So I made sure that I learnt some of the stage directions, and I did actually use some of the quotations of stage directions in my exam, which I think I probably did get marks for. Also, I really apologise if you can hear background noise. It's sort of like on and off raining, so I think you can probably hear rain in the background of this now. But I mean, I do live in England, so what can you expect? As I said earlier, another thing that you can do is also obviously watch the Mr. Bruff videos. He does videos on the poems, he does videos on loads and loads of different texts, loads of different exam techniques and stuff, so it's really worth going and checking out his channel. It really helped me with my GCSE revision, and I know it helped a lot of my friends, so it's definitely worth going and having a look at. So for the poem anthology, obviously this is slightly different to the other text, so I did revise it in a slightly different way. So the method which I used to revise the poems is I read over each of the poems in my poetry anthology one by one, and after I'd read one poem I would then go into my notebook and I would write down all the key quotes that I remembered. So obviously before you do this you've got to have a good understanding of all the poems, otherwise there's no point in even starting to try and remember anything from them. But I would then go into this notebook and I would just give you an example if I can find it. So here we have some poems, and basically I would write down all the quotes that I could remember. This was from quite early on, by the way. I did remember more than this in the end, but this is quite early on revision. So in black I wrote down all the quotes that I remembered, and then I would go back after I'd done everything and I would check to see if the quotations were right, and also write down the ones that I had missed out. Obviously I would not do this for every single line in the poem, I would just do this for, once again, what I considered to be the key quotations. So I did this for all the poems, and I found that this really helped me. I did this several times as well. This isn't sort of a one-time revision thing, you've got to do this several times. So I did this technique at least twice, before the exam, where I would write down everything that I remembered from the poem after I just read it through, and then check back and add more key quotations, etc. Also, for poems, obviously, you can also use mind maps, and I know that this worked really well for people, and I myself did do mind maps. I didn't do a mind map for every single poem, I just did them for ones that I was sort of unsure on or had revised less, such as I did one for Storm on the Island, and I actually did this in a study with me video once, but I've no idea where that mind map has gone, otherwise I would show it to you. But basically what I did is I put a little printout of the poem in the middle of the mind map, and then I annotated and I highlighted the key quotes and annotated those, and then I added a little box of context. Also, for these mind maps, obviously once again you can seek inspiration from online resources, and one thing that really helped me, especially for the context of each poem, is this book by David Wheeler, and it is the AQA GCSE Poetry Anthology Conflict and Power, the Student Guide. So I did conflict and power, if you were wondering, and basically he does like a really short kind of summary of each poem where he talks about the context of all of them, and then he also talks about kind of his take on the key quotations and what he thinks the poem is about. And as you can see, once again, I've highlighted some of it because, I mean, it wouldn't be Lydia Studied Revision if I didn't highlight half the book. Also, this goes without saying, for English literature, it is definitely worth doing practice exam questions. Obviously, I'm sure in class you will do some practice exam questions with your assessments and your mocks maybe, but it is worth doing some off your own back as well, because in the long run it will help you. It will develop your writing style, you will get to know more of how you can get around points better, if that makes sense. You will develop a sort of structure as well to your writing the more that you practice. You can find exam questions online, and then once again I'm sure your teacher will be more than happy to provide you with some practice ones for you to try. And then also, if your teacher's being really nice to you, you can also ask them to mark any practice questions that you do to see what kind of level that you're at and see where you're going wrong maybe, and see where you can improve. It's always worth seeking feedback on essays because it will genuinely help you to improve them if you know and if it's highlighted where you're going wrong or perhaps where you're losing marks. This also leads on to my next point, and that is make sure that you know exactly what the mark scheme is asking from you. I know the mark scheme can be quite hard to understand sometimes, so maybe ask your teachers to sort of translate it to you. Or, once again, Mr. Bruff, he explains the mark scheme quite well in his videos, because if you then understand what the exam board wants from you, then it's going to be a lot easier to pinpoint exactly those things in your essays and make sure that you're sort of mentally ticking off all the things that they want to see in your essay. So it's really, really worth familiarising yourself with the mark schemes. You can find them online really easily. So that is all the methods that I use to revise for my GCSE English Literature exams and also my GCSE language exams. I hope that you found this video useful. If you did, please do let me know down below in the comments. Also, perhaps share how you revised for your GCSE English Literature exams if you have done them. Obviously, everyone revises in different ways, and I've definitely not covered all the ways that you can revise in this video. As usual, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow my social media, which will be linked down below in the description. Bye guys!